Winter in Brooklyn always felt louder than other places. The subway roared. Sirens echoed. Wind cut through brick alleyways like it had something personal to prove. Ethan Cole stood outside a corner deli on Flatbush Avenue, hands buried in the pockets of a worn gray hoodie. The neon open sign flickered behind him. He was 17, tall but lean, dark hair falling into eyes that always looked like they were thinking about something bigger than the moment. Across the street, a black SUV stopped. He didn't need to see the license plate. He knew who it was. Olivia Sinclair stepped out like she didn't belong to the same planet as the cracked sidewalk beneath her heels. Long camel coat. Glossy dark hair. Confidence that came from never having to check a price tag. But when she saw Ethan, she smiled like none of that mattered. She crossed the street without waiting for the light. "Your mom working late again?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "Double shift." Olivia glanced at the deli window. "You eat?" "Yeah." "You lying?" He smirked. "Maybe." She rolled her eyes and pushed past him into the deli. 5 minutes later, she walked out holding 2 slices of pizza wrapped in paper. "You don't have to keep doing that," he said. "I know," she replied softly. "I want to." And that was how it always started. Not with fireworks. Not with drama. Just small kindnesses that slowly became something neither of them knew how to live without. Their building rooftops faced each other across a narrow alley. On cold nights, they'd climb up with blankets and sit under the humming city sky. Olivia's Manhattan skyline view glittered in the distance. Ethan's side had water towers and graffiti. "Do you ever feel like this city is testing you?" she asked one night. "All the time." She hugged her knees. "My dad says Manhattan belongs to people who take it." Ethan stared at the skyline. "I don't want to take it," he said. "I want to build something better." She looked at him differently after that. Like she had just realized he wasn't temporary. "Promise me something," she whispered. "What?" "Promise me Manhattan won't change you." He hesitated, then nodded. "I promise." She didn't know promises in New York had expiration dates. 2 years later, they both walked through the gates of Columbia University, but through very different doors. Olivia arrived in a chauffeured car. Ethan carried everything he owned in 2 duffel bags. He was there on a full scholarship, computer science, top of his class, working nights at a coffee shop near campus. Their relationship had grown deeper, quieter. They didn't post pictures. They didn't announce it. It was theirs. Late-night study sessions in Butler Library. Cheap food trucks. Subway rides at 1 a.m. She'd rest her head on his shoulder and whisper, "When you're famous, don't forget this train." He'd laugh. "I won't be famous." "You will. Then I'll build you something." "Build me what?" "A life no one can control." She didn't realize her father was already watching. The Sinclair headquarters towered over Manhattan like a warning. Glass. Steel. Power. Richard Sinclair didn't yell. He didn't need to. When Ethan was escorted into the corner office on the 48th floor, the air itself felt expensive. Richard stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back. "You love my daughter." Not a question. Ethan didn't flinch. "Yes." Richard turned slowly. "You think that's admirable? I think it's honest." A thin smile. "Dangerous. I built everything you see out there. Do you know what that required?" Ethan said nothing. Sacrifice. Strategy. Elimination of weakness. Silence stretched. Richard walked to his desk and slid a folder across the surface. Inside were printed bank records. Grant funding. Ethan's name attached. "Financial misconduct," Richard said calmly. "Federal level." Ethan's stomach dropped. "That's not real." "It will be." The room went quiet in a way that felt permanent. "You have 2 options," Richard continued. "Disappear. Transfer schools. Leave New York. I make this go away. And if I don't..." Richard's voice didn't rise. "You'll be arrested by the end of the week." Olivia tried calling Ethan 23 times. He didn't answer. Because he couldn't. 2 days later, campus police escorted him out in front of students filming on their phones. "Ethan, do you admit to misusing university funds?" "I didn't steal anything." Headlines spread fast. Scholarship revoked. Internship offers canceled. His professor avoided eye contact. That night, Olivia was locked inside her penthouse. Her phone confiscated. Her father's voice steady and cold. He confessed. She screamed. "You're lying. I'm protecting you." 2 months later, ballroom lights glittered across Manhattan. Daniel Crawford, billionaire investor, 32, precise, politically connected, slipped a diamond ring onto Olivia's finger. She felt nothing. Her father whispered in her ear, "This is stability." Across town, Ethan packed one backpack. The charges had mysteriously been dropped after he signed a quiet non-disclosure agreement. He wasn't allowed to speak publicly. He wasn't allowed to defend himself. He wasn't allowed near Olivia. That night he stood outside the Sinclair wedding venue across the street. Snow started falling. He saw her through the glass doors. White dress. Frozen smile. For 1 second, she looked toward the street. Their eyes met. And she looked away. That was the moment something inside him stopped breathing. The next morning, Ethan Cole no longer existed in Brooklyn records. No forwarding address. No social media. No goodbye. Olivia searched for months. But power erases people efficiently in New York. By winter, she stopped looking. By spring, she stopped believing. By summer, she stopped feeling. And somewhere across the country, Ethan began building something that didn't need permission. San Jose didn't feel like New York City. There were no sirens screaming through midnight. No steel towers watching you fail. Just sunlight, wide roads, and opportunity disguised as indifference. Ethan rented a single room above a laundromat. No furniture except a mattress and a folding table. He didn't cry the first night. He didn't cry the second either. But on the third night, when exhaustion hit and silence got too loud, he whispered her name once. Olivia. Then he opened his laptop. And he didn't say it again. He started freelancing under a shortened name, E. Cole. Small cybersecurity contracts, bug fixes, back-end optimizations. He worked 16 hours a day. Because when you're coding, you don't think. And when you don't think, you don't remember a wedding dress behind glass doors. 6 months later, one of his clients, a mid-tier venture firm, noticed something. His system patches were smarter than requested. Cleaner. Predictive. They called him in. A glass conference room in Palo Alto. "You ever consider building your own platform?" the investor asked. Ethan didn't hesitate. "I already am." Back in Manhattan, Olivia learned how to smile on command. Daniel Crawford wasn't cruel. He was worse. He was controlled. Strategic. Their marriage was a partnership, not a relationship. Dinner conversations were about market expansion. Vacations were networking events. When she tried to talk about feelings once, Daniel adjusted his cufflinks and said, "Emotions complicate leverage." She stopped trying after that. At night, she would stand by the penthouse window, looking at the skyline, whispering the same question over and over. "Did you really do it?" She wanted to believe Ethan was innocent. But power rewrites memory if you let it. Ethan's platform launched quietly. A predictive security AI designed to detect financial manipulation before it happened. He didn't market it. He demonstrated it. During a closed-door tech demo, he fed it anonymized corporate data. The system identified 3 hidden fraud patterns within minutes. The room went silent. A senior partner leaned forward. "How long have you been building this?" Ethan's voice was calm. "Since the day I learned how easy it is to fake evidence." Funding followed within weeks. Not millions, but enough. He hired 2 engineers, then 5, then 10. He never spoke about his past. He never spoke about her. But every line of code was written like a quiet promise. Never powerless again. Olivia's 3rd anniversary party was held in a private rooftop lounge overlooking Central Park. Champagne. Investors. Political figures. Her father toasted the future of the Sinclair-Crawford alliance. She felt like a signature on a contract. Later that night, Daniel finally said what she already knew. "We should start discussing heirs." She turned slowly. "You mean children?" "I mean legacy." She looked at him carefully. Do you love me? He didn't answer immediately. That was answer enough. 3 years after disappearing, Ethan Cole became Ethan Cole again. His company rebranded. Cole Systems. Then, Cole Technologies. Then, after a massive acquisition, Cole Global. Tech media started using a word he hated. Visionary. He gave interviews with controlled restraint. No personal questions. No past. When asked what motivated him, he said, integrity. And somewhere in Manhattan, Richard Sinclair read that article twice. Because powerful men recognize threats before anyone else does. It wasn't revenge that brought Ethan back to New York. It was data. Cole Global's AI flagged a series of suspicious financial movements within Sinclair properties. Layered shell companies. Inflated land valuations. Risk exposure hidden beneath redevelopment bonds. It wasn't illegal. Yet. But it was fragile. And fragile empires collapse beautifully. His board asked if he wanted to pursue acquisition talks. Ethan stared at the Manhattan skyline through a California office window. 5 years ago, he had stood outside in the snow. Powerless. Now, he had leverage. Schedule the meeting, he said. Financial news exploded one cold morning. Cole Global makes aggressive move toward Sinclair Holdings. Olivia nearly dropped her coffee. The photo attached to the article showed him. Older. Sharper. Colder. But it was him. Alive. Thriving. Untouched by ruin. Her heart did something it hadn't done in years. It woke up. 2 weeks later, Sinclair headquarters prepared for a negotiation meeting. Boardroom. Security. Media on standby. Olivia wasn't supposed to attend, but she stood near the executive elevator anyway. When the doors opened, Ethan stepped out. Black tailored suit. Controlled posture. Eyes that no longer searched for approval. For a second, time fractured. Neither of them spoke. He looked at her like she was a chapter he had already closed. Professional. Distant. Mrs. Crawford, he said politely. That hurt more than anger would have. Sinclair headquarters. 48th floor. The same floor where, 5 years ago, Ethan had been threatened into silence. Now he walked in without being escorted. Richard Sinclair sat at the head of the table. Daniel Crawford to his right. Legal team lining the walls. Ethan placed a single tablet on the polished wood table. Thank you for meeting, he said calmly. Richard's eyes didn't blink. You've done well for yourself. Ethan gave a small nod. So have you. The screen lit up. Graphs. Property exposure. Offshore layering. Risk models. Daniel leaned forward slightly. This is aggressive positioning, Daniel said. Ethan corrected him gently. No. This is vulnerability. The room went quiet. Ethan continued. Your redevelopment bonds tied to Lower Manhattan are over-leveraged. If market confidence shifts even 2%, you'll trigger a liquidity cascade. Richard's jaw tightened. That's speculation. Ethan met his gaze steadily. It's mathematics. Silence. And in that silence, something shifted. 5 years ago, Ethan had been the one with no leverage. Not anymore. Ethan didn't threaten. He offered. Cole Global will purchase 34% controlling interest in Sinclair properties. Daniel spoke first. Hostile. Strategic. Richard leaned back. And if we refuse? Ethan's voice remained calm. Then I release a risk assessment to the market. Not illegal. Not defamatory. Just data. Truth delivered at the right moment destroys more efficiently than lies. Richard studied him carefully. You're not here for money. Ethan didn't respond. But across the hallway, Olivia felt the tension through glass. She watched him from a distance. He looked like a man who had built armor from heartbreak. After the meeting adjourned, Ethan walked toward the elevator. Olivia stepped in front of him. Up close, it was worse. He wasn't the boy from Brooklyn anymore. But his eyes, they still remembered. You're alive, she whispered. A pause. I always was. The elevator doors closed behind them. Just the two of them. You never reached out, she said, voice shaking slightly. I wasn't allowed to. Her breath caught. My father said you confessed. Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. I signed a document to prevent federal prosecution based on fabricated evidence. She stared at him. Fabricated? He didn't accuse. He didn't beg. He simply said, "You deserve the truth." The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened. He stepped out and left her standing there with 5 years of doubt cracking open. That night, Daniel poured himself a glass of bourbon. "You still love him," he said casually. Olivia froze. "You're imagining things." Daniel turned slowly. "I don't imagine. I calculate." He stepped closer. "You think he came back for business?" Silence. Daniel's voice dropped. "He came back for leverage. And your leverage." For the first time in years, Olivia felt fear. Not of losing status, but of realizing her marriage had never been partnership, only positioning. 3 days later, a sealed envelope arrived anonymously at Olivia's penthouse. Inside, copies of financial documents, internal emails, timestamps, grant authorization approvals from 5 years ago, signed by Sinclair legal counsel, not Ethan. Her hands trembled as she read. He hadn't stolen anything. He had been framed, and she had married the man who helped destroy him. Snow began falling over New York City again. Olivia stood on the same rooftop where she once made him promise not to change. She finally understood something devastating. He hadn't changed. He had adapted. There's a difference. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Ethan's voice on the other end. "We need to talk." No anger. No softness. Just inevitability. Inside Sinclair board meetings, tension grew. Stock analysts were nervous. Cole Global continued buying shares quietly. Richard realized too late. This wasn't revenge fueled by emotion. It was patience weaponized. Daniel confronted Richard privately. "You underestimated him." Richard replied coldly. "I underestimated love." They met in a quiet private lounge overlooking the Hudson. No reporters. No family. No power structures. Just history. "You let me believe you betrayed me," Olivia said. Ethan held her gaze. "You let them erase me." That hurt, because it was true. Tears filled her eyes. "I was trapped." "You were powerful," he replied gently. "Just not brave." Silence stretched between them. Then he said something she didn't expect. "I never stopped loving you." Her breath broke. "But I stopped meeting you." And that was worse. It started at 6:12 a.m. A financial blog published a confidential source report. Cole Global's rapid expansion tied to emotionally motivated acquisition of Sinclair properties. The article wasn't illegal. It was strategic character assassination. It implied instability, personal conflict, emotional decision-making. Investors react badly to emotion. By 9 a.m., Cole Global stock dipped 4%. By noon, 7%. Ethan sat calmly in his Manhattan office, watching market fluctuations. He didn't react, but his CFO leaned in carefully. "This is Crawford." "I know. You want to respond?" Ethan's eyes stayed on the skyline. "No." Let him escalate. Olivia's divorce filing became headline news within hours. Crawford, Sinclair marriage ends amid corporate tensions. Reporters swarmed outside her residence. Commentators speculated infidelity, power struggles, financial motives. Daniel gave one statement: personal matters should not affect corporate integrity. Translation: he was preparing for war. Olivia met Daniel one last time in their penthouse. "You leaked it," she said quietly. He didn't deny it. "You destabilized my company." "You tried to own me," she replied. He stepped closer. "You think he loves you? Or do you think he loves winning?" That question lingered, because even Olivia didn't know anymore. Daniel's voice softened, dangerously. "If I release certain archived documents, Cole Global's early funding trails could be questioned." She froze. "Are you threatening him?" "I'm protecting my interests. You destroyed us." Daniel looked at her with something close to irritation. There was never an US. That evening, Daniel made his final move. He anonymously submitted partial financial documents from Cole Global's early California days to federal regulators. They weren't illegal, but presented out of context, they could trigger investigation. News broke within 24 hours. Regulators review Cole Global's early investment structure. Stock dropped again. Media vultures circled. Ethan finally stood from his chair. Not angry. Focused. He called one person. Prepare the full Sinclair exposure file. Silence on the other end. Are you sure? Yes. Daniel wanted escalation. He was about to understand scale. Ethan didn't leak rumors. He released verified data. Every over-leveraged bond. Every hidden shell layer. Every regulatory gray zone. Not illegal, but reckless. Within 48 hours, Sinclair stock plummeted 18%. Emergency board meeting called. Credit lines froze. Richard Sinclair sat in his office, staring at screens. For the first time in decades, he had lost control. Richard requested a private meeting. No lawyers. No press. Just Ethan. Same office. Same skyline. But the power dynamic had flipped. You could have destroyed us, Richard said quietly. I still can. Why didn't you? Ethan's voice was steady. Because innocent people work for you. Silence. Richard studied him carefully. You still love her. Ethan didn't respond. Richard nodded slightly. That makes you predictable. Ethan finally spoke. No. It makes me restrained. And restraint is a terrifying form of strength. The markets expected total takeover. Instead, Ethan announced a structured rescue acquisition. Cole Global would stabilize Sinclair properties, protect employees, retain staff. But Richard would step down as chairman. Daniel would be removed from executive authority. It wasn't revenge. It was replacement. Public perception shifted overnight. Ethan wasn't emotional. He was disciplined. Snow fell again over Brooklyn. Olivia stood beside Ethan. Is it over? She asked. For them, he said. And for us. He looked at her carefully. The city lights reflected in her eyes. I don't want revenge, he said. I don't want control. I want something real. Her breath trembled. Then choose me. Long silence. Finally, he stepped closer. For once, he said softly, I'm choosing what they tried to take. And he kissed her. Not desperate. Not dramatic. Intentional. Across town, Daniel watched the press conference replay. Ethan and Olivia standing side by side. United. Calm. Daniel's jaw tightened. He wasn't finished. Powerful men rarely accept defeat gracefully. And when ego is wounded, it becomes dangerous.